Welcome back to the Commanders Declassified podcast. I am L.E. Eric. What's happening?
What is up, my friend? Happy Father's Day belated to all my dads out there.
Shout out to the papas of the world. Brian is at a yodeling convention in Geneva. Shout out to Brian. Hope you have safe travels with your yodeling.
Get that Ricola. Get your Ricola on.
Ricola. So tonight we're going to go through our all 22. And what that means is our all-time great Redskins, Washington football team commanders at each of the offensive and defensive positions for players that we have watched during eras where we were cognizant of what was going on the football field. What this is not is an all-time list of Washington Redskins, Commanders, Braves since the beginning of time. I wasn't around to see it. I can't put them on my list for this particular episode. Same thing with Eric. We grew up in slightly different eras, so there's going to be some variance with what we have here. It should be fun. Brian did send us his list in advance. For quarterback, he had John Beck. Running back was Trunk Kennedy. Fullback was Lake Seastruck. Guys like
I
that.
like it.
Yeah. So anyway, Eric, I'm going to let you kick it off. Let's go defense first. Give me your defensive 11 all-time Redskins Commanders Washington.
All right. So I love this topic, by the way. I'm a huge nerd about this kind of stuff, so I appreciate you coming up with this topic, Ellie. It's a great off-season banter. And again, we're going to keep in mind that this is players that I've seen. Now, I'm 47 at the moment, right? So we're talking about early 80s to today. So apologies to my Chris Hamburger fans, my Mike Bass fans. Like, I get it, but I didn't see those guys play, so I can't put them on my list. So I want to qualify that first because I know we're going to get comments about, Vernon Dean or whatever back in the day. So I'm going to start out with my defensive line, my all-time defensive line. My two defensive ends, I'm going to go with Dexter Manley, which is an absolute no-brainer. Dexter Manley there was a time in the mid-'80s, you could mention Dexter in the same breath as Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White, and people would not laugh at you. There was a brief time. Like, he wasn't career-wise, overall doesn't stack up, but there was a brief run, like 86, he had 17 and a half sacks. Absolutely belongs. He's your number one defensive end of all time on this team. My number two was a little tougher. I had it narrowed down to two guys. I'm going to roll with Ryan Kerrigan as my number two. He barely edged out Charles Mann. And the reason I went with Kerrigan is because he's got that sack record. But Charles Mann and Kerrigan, actually, from what I remember of Mann, they were very similar players, very not super dynamic pass rushers, but very effective at what they were good at, right? Like, they were really good, powerful players, good bull rushes. But Mann was an unbelievable athlete. But as a pass rusher, he was a very good, not great pass rusher. He was a very good edge setter, very similar to Kerrigan, right? Kerrigan has the edge because he's got that sack total. He's got more sacks. Mann was like around the 84 range. Kerrigan got up to like 95 or 96. So I'm going to give that to Kerrigan. Those are my two defensive ends. Defensive tackle, I'm going to roll with my guy, Pumpkinhead, Dave Butts from back in the day. I know Ellie's not going to have him on his list because he's too young for that stuff. But Dave Butts was an absolute monster in the middle. He clogged up everything from like 1974 until like 1989. That dude was unbelievable for this team. He wore the same helmet every year, and he is a legend among Washington fans. I'm not sure why he's not in the Hall of Fame. I'm sure there's people have reasons for not voting for him. I think he's a phenomenal defensive tackle. And for my second defensive tackle, I'm going to roll with Jonathan Allen, a current day player. That is correct, my friends. Jonathan Allen, one of my favorite current Commanders. And he is an absolute beast. Now, there's some guys you could probably slip in here at the defensive tackle position that I wouldn't argue with. Somebody like a Jumpy Geathers, somebody like maybe even a little Swaggy P, Chris Baker from back in the day. But, we've had some good defensive tackles. Big Daddy Dan Wilkinson was very good for a couple of years here. But Jonathan Allen is phenomenal. He's one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. And I got no problem leaving here. He's on my all-time 22 team. Love the guy. Moving to linebacker, this was super simple. My number one, Wilbur Marshall. I don't know if Ellie remembers him or some of you young guys remember him. That guy was an absolute terror at the linebacker position. One of my favorite all-time. I mean, if I'm thinking my all-time favorite Washington Redskins football players, Commanders, whatever players, Wilbur Marshall's on that list. That guy was an absolute beast. Defensive player of the year. here. He was an unbelievable outside linebacker, just a menace. Really should have won the MVP in Super Bowl 26 against Buffalo. They gave it to Rippon. Wilbur Marshall was everywhere in that game. He should have been that MVP. My second linebacker, Monty Coleman, the Iron Man, dude played as many games as a linebacker could possibly play in the NFL, played forever and was good forever, an unbelievable athlete. Monty Coleman is my guy at the second linebacker position. Holding down the middle, my guy, London Fletcher. Even though he was at the tail end of his career here, London Fletcher was a monster, tackling machine. Finally got to the Pro Bowl with this football team, and I love me some Monty Coleman. Going back to safeties, of course, number 21's back there, Sean Taylor. Then Sean Taylor, for the short time that he was around, was just an absolute beast. It's an ultimate what could have been story with Sean Taylor. He could have been one of the greatest of all time. For the short time, I loved him while he was here, and he was as good as anybody that ever rolled back there. The second safety position is very difficult. I'm going to come back to it because it's a really hard position to pick because there's been some pretty good, nobody great safeties. So I'm going to move to corners because my corners are no-brainers, and I'm pretty sure Ellie's going to have the same too. It's Darrell Green and Champ Bailey. I don't know who else you would even possibly think would be on this team, on the All-22 team in the past 40 plus years or so. There's nobody even close to Darrell Green and Champ Bailey at that cornerback position. So that brings me back to my strong safety position. I'm going to go back in the day a little bit, and this may just be nostalgic because I don't even know the numbers, but I remember loving this guy when he was here for the 4 or 5 years that he was here, and that's my guy Alvin Walton. I don't know if y'all remember this dude. Some of my people my age will remember this guy. He would just wreck people, and this is back in the day when nobody cared about concussions or head injuries. This dude was a 180-pound safety that would just go head up with guys like Herschel Walker or Bo Jackson and just wreck them, right? Just an absolute hammer of a safety. And surprisingly, he was injured early on in his career and he had to retire early. But oh my gosh, did I love watching that guy just wreck people. He would just come in and just throw his whole body at the offense. And I loved every second of like the 4 or 5 years that he was here. So Alvin Walton. So that is my all-time defense for the Washington Commanders. What say you, Ellie, about my choices?
Yeah, I'm pulling up some of the guy's stats you're talking about, and I can't find Alvin Walton's stats. I know he had 12 interceptions in his career, but that's all I can find. I don't see.
Trust me on Alvin Walton. I don't think you'll ever see a highlight of Alvin Walton. That guy was so reckless with his body that it was the greatest thing ever to watch. He was so much fun to watch.
That's amazing. Strong safety was impossible for me, and then I at the last minute I pulled somebody out. I feel like, I'm cool with most of your choices. Some of the guys are a little bit before my time. But Jonathan Allen is interesting because he's not like in my top, favorite players on the current team, but he is a guy that I think could play in any era. And I think that has to mean something, right? Like, I could totally see him on the Super Bowl team from the 90s, as a defensive tackle. So I get it. I just, not one of my
love Jonathan Allen. Him and Terry are my two favorite current players. I love Jonathan Allen. I love everything about him. I love his attitude. He is a technician. He's as good as it gets in this league. I don't know what you don't see that I see.
He's too much of a good guy.
I don't know.
I like my athletes like Kevin Garnett, just like talk trash, get in your face. That's my kind of guy. But I can't be mad at that. Your linebackers surprised me a little bit, but I get where you're going with that.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't wait to hear you're going to be picking Mike Barrow or something.
Jesse
Armstead lined up. Yeah.
All right, here's what I'm going to go. All right, defensive end, I went Charles Mann. This was the defensive end of my childhood. I was still pretty young in the 90s. Like, my first real memory of the Redskins was when they won the Super Bowl, as a kid. So Charles Mann was all over that. My mom was a huge Charles Mann fan. I met him not too long ago in an elevator, really nice guy, but I thought he was phenomenal. From what I could tell as a little kid, as a kid, you sensationalize everybody, but I remember him being great. My other DM, I struggle with this one too, because Ryan Kerrigan, for me, I never saw him as an elite defensive end, but I think it really speaks to maybe the lack of the other elite pass rusher. In that era, we had Iraq Poe. I wanted to go LeVar Arrington here, but you just can't because he was injured and just a short career and all that stuff. Yeah. Greg Williams
I
moved him
know.
up to an end in a 3-4. You get the point. He was rushing the passer, so I went that route. But I did go Kerrigan. I feel like I wanted to choose something else, but it just wasn't there for me to pick. And I love what you said about Dexter Manley, but again, I don't remember Dexter Manley outside of that Super Bowl. I do remember Charles Mann a little bit after that, but so that was. I do know factually that Dexter Manley was absolutely on Lawrence Taylor's level for a little while, but I didn't put him there. I absolutely struggled with the defensive tackles. I was going through like year by year, going back to like 94. I was like, dude, there's like nothing here. So I went Cornelius Griffin. Is it Griffith or Griffin? I can't remember. Cornelius Griffin.
Griffin, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. We got him from the Giants. I thought he was very good for us for a number of years. I liked how he played. I went Deron Payne for my other defensive tackle. Yes, I know John Allen's been more productive. I just like the mentality that Payne brings. And Payne is an ascending player who I think we haven't come close to seeing his ceiling yet. And since we gave him all that money, we better see more. Linebackers, I went Marcus Washington. I thought he was very, very good for us when he was here. He came over here from the Colts, right? And started for us for a while and was extremely good. I went London Fletcher in the middle. I don't think there's really a lot of argument there. I was thinking Kurt Govea, but that was, again, one of those barely saw in the 90s. I think he came to my elementary school, so that's why I remember him so well. And then I went Wilbur Marshall was my other linebacker. Believe it or not, Eric, I do remember Wilbur Marshall, and I loved what he was doing back then. But again, distant memories. All right, cornerbacks, Champ Bailey, Darrell Green. No argument. The only one is Rashad Wildgoose, but I decided to leave him off for Champ Bailey. No, shout out to him and Rashad Bauman both. But
you got all the Rashads covered. Look at you.
You got them all covered. Yes.
Ahmad Rashad in there somewhere. Felicia Rashad.
Who's arguing Champ Bailey and Dale Green?
Nobody. I don't want to hear it. I'm not listening.
Yeah, hit the comments, fellows. Who? Free safety, Sean Taylor. There's no other choice here whatsoever. I don't care if Ronnie Lott was the commander. I'm still going Sean Taylor at this point. Absolute game changer, game wrecker, changed the entire mentality of offenses playing against us because he was on the field. You got to go him. Strong safety. Flow with me on this one, Eric. Ryan Clark.
Okay.
What do you think?
I don't hate it.
You like it?
I know how old you are. I get it. I had no problem with it. No, I mean, I got no problem with it at all. Ryan Clark was a very solid player, and there really hasn't been much at the strongest safety position here for a long time. So I was thinking you were going to go like Stanley Richard or somebody like that, which also wouldn't have been terrible. He was okay for the 2 or 3 years he was here. No, Ryan Clark's fine. He was actually on my possibles list for safety, but I had dudes like Vernon Dean and stuff on there, and Barry Wilbur that like played safety for like 5 minutes. So yeah, strong safety is a tough call. So I got no problem at all with Ryan Clark. The Deron Payne pick is.
I know. I was a reach. I will admit that was a reach. I just like Deron Payne a lot, so I just stuck him there. Did you consider LaRon Landry at all for your safety?
No, no. Because I mean, was he? I don't remember him really being that good at all ever. Like, I really don't. Do you? Like, I know there was a lot going into it. I know he was okay.
I think he
never lived up to his draft really status.
No, he did not. But I think, what was he, like 5th or 8th overall or something like that?
Just
he had one season where I think he was really, really good, and then it really fell apart. My favorite LaRon Landry story is like being outside of the Redskins Stadium. And some of the players coming over to talk to us, and one of my boys asked, I think it was Chris Horton, like, what's up with LaRon Landry? Why won't he focus? And he's telling us that LaRon Landry has a motocross team that he's more interested in. That was one of the players that said that when LaRon Landry was on the team. So anyway, all right.
If we were picking the all-22 biceps team, I'd go with LaRon Landry.
Definitely go with LaRon. He's number one.
The gun show. But no, I didn't have him at all. No, I don't hate your list at all. Govea is an interesting pick. Govea was more of a kind of a role player on that. I mean, he started, I guess, that 91 team, but he was mostly more of like a special teams guy from what I remember. He did get some snaps on defense, but I would have maybe thought Andre Collins could have been a sleeper on that as well. But yeah, I don't hate your list at all. I know how old you are. Like I said, you don't have the luxury of remembering like the really good teams from the 80s. So I understand where you're coming from.
I appreciate your empathy with my list because I struggled with some of those positions.
Yeah.
But it really just speaks to the overall lack of talent that we've had here, especially elite talent in the last 30, 35 years, which is something that absolutely needs to change.
Yeah,
All
and
right.
Cornelius Griffin also, good call on that. I remember him. I didn't even consider him on my list, but no, he was nice for a little bit.
Yes, he
No
was.
problem with Cornelius Griffin at all.
Played on a lot of bad teams.
Mhm.
And I think that's
As
true
did
for
most of
almost
those guys you
everybody
picked.
after the
Yeah, I
90s.
know.
Let me hear your offense, man. I want to hear your 11 on offense who you picked.
Yeah, offense was a lot harder for me than defense was.
Yeah.
There were some really, really tough position groups. So we're going to start out with the offensive line. The hardest one I had to pick here was center. And I know that I'm an old guy, and Jeff Bostic is the obvious pick. But looking back at those teams, if there was like a weak link on the Hogs, it was always Jeff Bostic, right? Like he was the linchpin, and he was a part of that group, and you'll never forget him. But he was benched on more than one occasion, and they had to slide like Russ Grimm over to center. So I'm going to actually go. I'm going to go Casey Robach as my favorite center because I just can't do it with Bostic because I remember him, right? Robach was a solid center for a number of years here. There haven't really been a lot of great centers come through here, and I know that I'm probably going to get some hate for not picking Bostic, but I remember him, and he wasn't all that as a center. He just really wasn't.
To
So
be
that
clear, you're not talking about John Bostic.
I'm talking about Jeff Bostic. Jeff Bostic. Yeah, John Bostic would be on my elite list of linebackers. He's on that
Yeah.
second tier of guys that I would never pick.
Wait. But I'm sorry. So you're telling me that Jeff Bostic wasn't that great? Why do I remember him as like an all-time great?
Because he was a member of the Hogs, and he played
Yeah.
between like Russ Grimm, Mark May, Raleigh McKenzie, all those guys.
Yeah.
But I specifically remember like the NFC Championship game that they lost. They got destroyed by the Giants, like 17-0. And he was atrocious. He was just like they were picking him up and throwing him at Jay Schrader during that game. It was so bad that sticks in my memory. And I was only like 11 years old, I think, when I watched that game. But it's so stuck in my memory of how awful he was then. That and he was a solid player, and he could easily be on this list, right? Because there haven't been a ton of great centers. And Robach only played here for like 5 years, but he was good when he was here. He was like borderline Pro Bowl player. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna go with Robach, and I'm gonna stick with it. I'll take the heat in the comments from the old people. I get it. Moving to my guards, this one was pretty easy for me. Russ Grimm, he's a Hall of Famer. I clearly remember growing up watching the Hogs. He was a fantastic offensive lineman, struggled with injuries later on. He was more of a backup by the time they got to that 91 Super Bowl. He was kind of like a plug and play piece, but he wasn't like a standard, but he was unbelievable in the mid 80s. He was like 4 straight all pro teams. He was fantastic. My second guard, I'm going to go with Brandon Sheriff. It was a little tougher. There were some other good players that weren't consideration here. Guys like Randy Thomas, guys like Raleigh McKenzie, Mark May, that played guard here for a long time. But Sheriff, all pro level guard. He was fantastic. Wish he could have played his whole career here. It didn't happen, but he's my second guard. So Grimm and Sheriff are going to be my guards. My tackles, very simple: Joe Jacoby and Trent Williams. We've had a lot of really good left tackles come through DC, right? Chris Samuels is one of those guys. Jim Lachey. These guys are fantastic. But Joe Jacoby should absolutely 100% be a Hall of Famer. I don't know why he isn't. It makes me angry that he's not, but he's a Hall of Fame caliber player, just not in the Hall of Fame. It bugs me. One of the greatest left tackles here. He had to deal with Lawrence Taylor twice a year for years and held his own every time. Just a great player. Trent Williams, currently the best tackle in the NFL, left tackle in the NFL. He was that dude when he was here. He's fantastic. No problem there. No disrespect to guys like Chris Samuels, who was amazing during his time here. There's just been so many good left tackles, it's hard to pick. So that's my offensive line.
I'm gonna stop you there at the offensive line. Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
So
feel free.
I'm gonna give you mine in my O line because this is so important. Like offensive line is Redskins culture, right?
For this team,
so I want to give you mine too, so we can compare. I like what you're saying about the left tackles that we've just successfully been able to
really
draft.
blessed with left tackles in this group. Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like Packers and quarterbacks or Colts and quarterbacks. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they just they always have one. We always seem to have left tackles. Then we kind of hit a dry spell.
Like right now.
Like right now, right. So I went Chris Samuels as my left tackle. I remember just at this part of my impressionable youth now. Chris Samuels was so good, dude. For
Was
I think he had like a 10-year run. I think he might have played for 10 seasons or
played 10
something.
seasons. Yep.
He was just outstanding, and he was such a class dude. Now, remember what I said about Kevin Garnett type athletes? That's Trent Williams in a nutshell, too, right? He's in your face, he's loud, he's aggressive. I love Trent Williams. I really, really do. And I thought about putting him here. I just, for some reason, I'm a little bit more fond of Chris Samuel. And at that left tackle position. They both came from Oklahoma, didn't they?
Samuels was Alabama.
Was it Alabama? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, same colors. But anyway, so you can't go wrong. I mean, Trent Williams is a Hall of
Too
Famer,
many
first
good ones.
ballot, no
Yep.
doubt. Left guard, Trey Johnson. Man,
Okay.
listen, Trey Johnson was a mountain of a dude. I've also met him in person. I love Trey Johnson. He had a good or a nasty attitude on the field. You need that from your guards. I thought he was great. Right guard, I went Raleigh McKenzie. I will be real with you. I don't remember a lot about Raleigh McKenzie. I just know he was.
If you did, you would not have picked him over Sheriff.
I was gonna go Sheriff, and then I was like, no, because he left and he gets on my nerves now. But I went Raleigh McKenzie. Right tackle, I went John Jansen. I mean, come on, John Jansen, dude. He went to Michigan. Really great offensive tackle. He played for us for a lot of years till his body started failing him a little bit. For my center, Corey Raymer. Mic drop.
Raymer.
What do you think, man?
Whatever. That's fine. I mean, Raymer and Robach. Raymer would have been on my list as well. I thought Robach was a little better. So, yeah, the Jansen. So, I'll admit I cheated a little bit with tackle. I put two, although Joe Jacoby towards the end of his career did slide over to right tackle, and he was just as good there. I did pick basically two left tackles because that's what they do at the Pro Bowl. Like you just pick left tackles and put them at right tackle. I got no problem with John Jansen. Again, Chris Samuels. I'm not going to argue, Chris, especially since you're not really old enough to remember Jacoby at his finest. I got no problem with Chris Samuels there. Chris Samuels was an elite left tackle. The thing about Samuels is like the biggest knock against Samuels isn't really a knock. It's just that he played in an era where there were so many amazing left tackles that he kind of gets forgotten because he played alongside like Orlando Pace and Walter Jones and Jonathan Ogden. And he was like, as good as he was in any other era, he would have been like a top 2 left tackle. But he was like the 5th left tackle in that era just because there were so many good ones. But no, I nothing against Chris Samuels whatsoever. He could totally be on this list without any issue. Again, Jansen, I got no problem. Raleigh McKenzie was like a swing player, right? He would play any interior offensive line position. I don't know necessarily that he was the best guard, but he was a good guard. Another guy I thought you might have gone with over McKenzie would have been Mark Schlereth, who also was pretty good here. Although he was at his best when he was in Denver. He was kind of on the upswing when he was here. He was really good in Denver. But again, I don't hate your picks. I'm not gonna argue. I'll never say a bad word about Chris Samuels, right? For my opinion, I think Trent Williams is just as good as it gets at left tackle. He's like the Walter Jones of this era. And that's kind of where I'm at. He is that guy.
I thought about Schlereth a little bit. I don't remember him playing for us. And so I just said, forget it.
He was young, and he was kind of like he came in because Russ Grimm was injured. And he was good. Like he was a solid player, late round draft pick. He was just on the up and coming. He improved tremendously when he was here. He was really at his best with Denver, though.
Yeah,
I like him. Bailey.
I don't hate that. I think Chris Samuel and John Jansen are the best left tackle and right tackle combo we've ever had. You agree?
No, I mean I'd go Lachey and Jacoby.
Okay.
But again, I'm old.
All right.
I mean Lachey was an All-Pro level left tackle, and Jacoby was an All-Pro level right tackle in the early '90s and late '80s. So. But again, you were in preschool, so it's fine. I understand.
Hey, all right, let's go to tight end. Who was your tight end?
Tight end was tricky, right? But I have to go with Cooley. Chris Cooley is my tight end. There's a lot of good tight ends that have come through here. I know Jordan Reed is probably going to be one of the guys you mentioned. He's just hurt all the time. And a good route runner, and he couldn't block anybody, right? Cooley wasn't the best blocker, but he was a willing blocker. Cooley caught passes. He was productive. He was good in both aspects. He wasn't a tell. Then you look back and you see a guy like Don Warren from back in the day who was really good. Steven Alexander was really good when he was here for a couple of years. Jamie Asher is a guy that you think like I remember that was a pretty solid, like overachiever type tight end. But as far as like total package tight ends that we've had, I mean, it's Cooley for me. I think Cooley's just the guy.
Well, shout out to Doc Walker, Don Warren, guys. Like,
Yeah, Doc Walker. So Doc Walker's very poor recollection of Doc Walker because he was basically like my first 2 years of watching football is when he was around. So I can't really. It's very difficult to remember him as a player.
Yeah, and a different era too, like a completely different era of football as it relates to the tight end position. I actually went Chris Cooley. I've got a lot of fond memories of Cooley playing, especially like during like the '05 that type of era. I remember he caught the game-winning touchdown. I think to send us to the playoffs against the Cowboys, or send the kick the Cowboys out of the playoffs. One of those two things. Um, I was never the biggest Cooley fan while he was playing. I mean, I liked him and I appreciated his talent, but I just wasn't like I don't know. He wasn't a player that resonated with me a lot. Um, but man, it's another position I think that we've really been starving to find really elite talent. And Chris Cooley was just very good for a number of years, and he just always did his job, and he knew what he was supposed to do, and he did it. And he was a quarterback's friend, which is what a tight end is supposed to be. I think Jordan Reed was just hurt too much from a talent perspective. We've never had one like him here. The issue is you got to play both sides. You got to block too as a tight end, like you said, and you got to be on the field. But when he was on the field, nobody touched Jordan Reed. Honorable mentions. I don't have one. Like that's how barren I think that position has been for us. Logan Thomas had a good season, and then he's kind of had a couple of not so great seasons. So it's Cooley by a runaway for me. Did you do a fullback or no?
A fullback? No, I don't do a fullback. I did 3 wide receivers because there's too many good wide receivers in this team.
I did the traditional fullback, and I went Darrell Young. I'm a huge Darrell Young fan.
I'll give you that. Yeah, I'll give you that. He was better fullback than Sellers for sure. Those are the only 2 fullbacks I even remember us having.
Yeah,
and Darrell Young was way better.
I like Sellers too, but yes, Darrell Young. All right, let's go wide receivers, man. Let's crack it open. Who'd you have for your wide receiver?
This is so tough, man, because as much as I love Terry McLaurin, I really want to put him on this list. I do, but the total, I just can't yet with him. Like I think he will eventually be one of the top 3 receivers ever on this team, but I just don't think he's there just yet, just because he's only been here 4 years. So I left Terry off as much as it makes me sad. Obviously, the guy I'm going with first is Art Monk, the Hall of Famer, Mr. Consistent, did everything. Was a great blocker, great receiver, everything you'd want in a wide receiver. That was what Art Monk was, and there's no way I'm leaving him off my list as an old fart. Number 2, Santana Moss. I love Santana Moss, and I think we said it last week. If he played today, he would be unbelievable. He'd be Tyreek Hill today. He's that good. He was a little ahead of his time as a player. But a super productive wide receiver here. Really, pretty much all we had in the mid 2000s as far as like playmakers. And he's got the career numbers, he's got the highlights, he's got just everything you want in a receiver. So he's my guy. And the guy that I struggle the most, him and Hall over Terry with, I just couldn't put him in over yet, is Gary Clark. Gary Clark was that dude. And he's not the LE type athlete player that you love. Like, he was not a fast guy, not a big guy, not a strong guy. He was as good a route runner as ever played in this league, and he got himself open all the time. Somebody who runs a 4.6 540 was known as one of the best deep threats in the NFL. He's doing something right. Gary Clark had unbelievable hands. He had unbelievable fire. He was a great receiver. And I got to put him over. He had close to 700 career catches, and that's because he played 2 seasons in the USFL before coming to the NFL. He would be in that 700 to 800 reception club otherwise. Love him. One of the all-time greats. Got to go with Gary Clark. So many good receivers to choose from. Of course, my guy Ricky Sanders gets an honorable mention. He was always kind of that third wheel back in the day. My first NFL jersey was a Ricky Sanders back in '88, so I'm very proud to say that. And but yeah, we've had plenty of good receivers here. But yeah, those are my 3: Monk, Clark, and Santana Moss are my all-time 3 receivers here.
Oh man, you know what? It is difficult to choose. I think so. I met Gary Clark once, and this was when I was playing high school football, and he came up to me, or I came up to him really, and said, "What's up?" He was like, "Oh, you play wide receiver, don't you?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I could tell." That just lit my world up. I was like, "Man, Gary
Oh
Clark
yeah,
knows I'm a
he needs to be on
receiver."
your
Like,
list
what?
just for that. Yeah,
Just for that? No, but he didn't make my list
he'd have been
actually.
like, he saw me, he'd have been like, "You play chess, don't you?"
Oh, so
You
I
must be
only
the
had two.
backup kicker.
Yes. I had two because I went fullback on mine. I have no idea why I did that, but I went fullback. I just wanted to give Darrell Young some love. That's all. Um, if I hadn't gone two, I would have gone. I had Art Monk is my number one. Santana is my number two. Art Monk to me was like embodied that entire Super Bowl team. Like he was so good, and Art Monk was the best in the league, in my opinion, at that time. He was just absolutely unreal. Um, the Santana, like if you're like, I don't know, if you were just alive during that time for those 2000, early 2000s, mid 2000s, command or Redskins teams, like I don't know how Santana is just not on your list. I mean, that guy was Mr. Everything. And he's one of those guys that you can go in any stadium against any defensive back and you know he's going to show out, right? He was just that good. He could catch the ball, had really great hands. He was flashy. He had excellent cuts after he caught the ball. His body control was amazing. He was a highly intelligent football player. And he came from the U during the peak era of the U. Like, that's crazy. And then he still um, became amazing in the NFL. And I remember when we got him from the Jets, wasn't it?
Yep,
And did we trade them Lavernius Coles to get Santana Moss or
yep.
yeah?
Lavernius Coles.
And I like Lavernius Coles too, by the way. But I just, man, Santana Moss was just everything that you could want in an NFL player. And I think he was a little bit after like the poster era. But I think if, hanging posters on your wall, I mean, but if he was in that era, like he would be the guy that you would get a poster, put up on your wall while you're watching Saved by the Bell or whatever in your room. So Santana all the way. No complaints there. Gary Clark would be my third if I had to pick. So I'm with you all the way, man. All right. Who's your running back?
This is another really, really tough one for me. And the hard part is that the obvious choice for an old person is John Riggins, because John Riggins, I mean, just he's the embodiment of that early 80s mentality of this team, right? John Riggins, when I first started watching football, were probably his two best years in the NFL, three best years, 82, 83, 84. He was ridiculous in those years, right? He's the only running back in NFL history, I believe, that has more rushing yards after the age of 30 than he has before the age of 30. That's an unbelievable stat, right? He rushed for 2,500 yards over 2 years in 83 and 84. He was at his peak when he should have been out of the NFL by running back standards. Um, but I was so young when I watched him that I don't even know that I appreciated it. I just remember all the diesel chants and the burr, burr, and all that stuff
Yeah.
that would go through the stadium. But, again, I was very young. And then the time I was really cognizant and really started like understanding what was happening in football was about the 85 season. And he was definitely on the decline by that point. The other guys on my potentials list, Terry Allen might be my favorite player. Like Terry Allen was all this team had in like 95, 96, 97.
Yeah.
This team was like nothing because Michael Westbrook was terrible and he should have been great. Heath Schuler was terrible. We had Gus Frerotte. Like Terry Allen was it, and he was amazing for 3 seasons. He's the first running back this team ever had to get 3 consecutive 1,000-yard seasons, I believe, and he did it on 2 reconstructive knees. He was followed up by Stephen Davis, who was unbelievable, and he just got shafted by Steve Spurrier, who just didn't want to run the ball. He could have been the all-time leading rusher for this team if Steve Spurrier hadn't become the head coach. And then, of course, Clinton Portis coming in 2000 in 04. He had such a good run here, such a difficult. There's such a good running back for so long here. And again, him and Santana Moss were pretty much the offense for a good chunk of the mid 2000s. And you got to follow that up with Alfred Morris, who as a rookie came in and just lit the league on fire. So many good running backs to choose from. This is a very difficult choice for me, but I got to go with the only guy from that group who's ever going to sniff the Hall of Fame, and who's in the Hall of Fame. And that's John Riggins. I just can't, in good conscience, not put John Riggins as the top running back here because he's just the Hall of Fame running back for this team, and he was the identity of the team in the early 80s. when they were at some of their best football. So John Riggins is my guy, but I have no problem putting any of those other guys I mentioned on this list in there because they've all been so good for this team.
Well, shout out to Ernest Biner. You know, we don't want to forget him.
I didn't even mention Ernest Biner.
Yeah.
I forgot all about Ernest Biner.
Yeah. So Riggins was done by 1985. I have no recollection of Riggins. Riggins never played, or he only played in 16 games once in his time in Washington. He never started 16 games. He played in 16, never started 16 for us. So he did a lot of damage in a short amount of time, but in terms of games, I should say. But no, I fully respect the legacy of John Riggins, even if I never saw him play, or I kind of learned about him after the fact. I had a really sweet John Riggins jersey for a long time, by the way. But I went Stephen Davis. He's my all-time favorite Redskins player, period. I mean, the guy was just an absolute monster. He came out of Auburn. They tried to make him a fullback. He was patient, and then he said, "Yo, I'll take the lead back role and run with it." He was fast, or he was quick, I should say. He was powerful. Catch ball in the backfield. I thought there's no other Redskins player I like more than Stephen Davis. I'm just going to put it to you like that. But I think he really got screwed by Spurrier, like you said, out of what could have been just a legendary career here with us. But Stephen Davis, number 48, was that dude. He was a big dude, ran on his toes, and just brought it every time. I think he was elite during his time, and I was always very, very happy to watch him play. So Stephen Davis is my dude.
No complaints with Stephen Davis. Shout out to Clinton Portis too, though, because Clinton Portis was a beast when he was here, and he was not really suited for Joe Gibbs's running game, especially early on. But he still got it done and did his thing. But I agree with you on Stephen Davis, man. What could have been with him if we had just gone with a coach who was interested in the running game. But man, it just didn't happen. Too bad for Stephen Davis, because I liked him coming out of Auburn, and he got to sit and learn behind Terry Allen for a couple of years, who, again, I cannot stress to you enough how much I love Terry Allen. Might be one of my favorite all-time players as well. That guy was so good and underrated when he was here. But yeah, Stephen Davis was just as good, if not better than Allen. So many good running backs have come through here for sure.
Yeah, man, we've been really fortunate at that position, not to forget Keyjana Carter as well. All right. Let's quarterback, man. We've already reached the quarterback, believe it or not, dude.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk about quarterback at all. I hate it.
Who was your guy?
This is an impossible choice because this team has just never had a great quarterback that I can in my lifetime. Let's put it that way. Obviously, my Sonny Jurgensen peeps are going to be there. I never saw Sonny play. I can't attest to anything, right? So going back in my life, we had Joe Theismann, we had Jay Schrader, Doug Williams, Mark Rippon, the muddle of the 90s, just the awful quarterback parade that we had in the 90s. It was very difficult. And as much as it pains me to even include, like, Kirk Cousins is probably the most consistent quarterback this team has had ever in my lifetime, as far as like putting up like good seasons, like back to back to back, but he just never got it done when it mattered. So, it's very difficult. Mark Rippon had a really good 2-year run, like 89, 90, where he was just unbelievable. He was fantastic. Or no, 90, 91, sorry, where he was great. But he was just garbage every other year. Doug Williams basically put together 3 good games in 1987, and he's a legend in DC for it, but he was just awful. Otherwise, don't watch any. There are no Doug Williams highlights in Washington outside of those 3 games. So again, I'm going to have to go back to my early childhood here and go with Joe Theismann. I mean, Joe Theismann, I do remember the season that he was league MVP. Vaguely, the team got to the Super Bowl, had the best record in the league. He put up all kinds of passing yards. They were chucking it all over the place. They had the personnel to get it done. Joe Theismann, he's the only guy on this list that's ever been a league MVP. The only accolade outside of RG3's Rookie of the Year, which was smoke and mirrors. It's just, I can't give it to anybody else. Like there's no way I'm giving it to Kirk Cousins, even though he put together solid seasons in Jay Gruden's pass-friendly offense. I got to go with Theismann. He's my guy. He's my guy. Even though I don't like really any of the quarterbacks that we've had here ever. I could give some love to Gus Farrat, who I was his mini me. I think I posted that picture before where I had him standing next to Gus Farrat and we look just like each other. It's ridiculous, but no, it's got to be Joe Theismann for me. It's all I can do. I don't like any of the choices, but Joe Theismann is the most palatable for me, and I'm glad I'm not your age in this situation.
You know what's funny? Like I totally punted on this one with my pick, and I just looked up the the stats of the person I picked, and I could say I'm totally way off with this. Um, I remember when we got Heath Schuler, what was it, 94?
Mhm.
And I remember as a kid the newspaper had like the split. It was like Heath Schuler or Trent Dilfer. And I'm like, oh man, we got the right one. Both were wrong. But
Mm.
God, Heath Schuler was bad. And what an awful time. What an awful time that was. I went Trent Green, and for some reason, I thought Trent Green was better than what he was statistically when he was here. He was only here for 2 years. I did no
I-
research on the quarterback. And he played a total of 16 games, started at 14, 23 touchdowns to 11 picks, though. He should have been here longer. I was a
yes.
huge Trent Green fan. My honorable mention was Patrick Ramsey. I think those are emotional picks. I will admit that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. Trent
those are my guys.
Green I agree with you on Trent Green. He should have been here and he could have been good here. He got caught up in the sale of the team, right? Because he played that 98 season and he was okay. Like that's where he put up most of his numbers when the team was just awful and they benched Gus Farrat and Jeff Hostetler. They put him in. And he started like 7 or 8 games in a row and he put up decent numbers even though the team wasn't great. But he was a free agent after that year, and that's the year that there was like this hold up with the sale of the team, and they didn't have everything straight by the time free agency rolled around. So he basically walked, and they couldn't do anything about it because they didn't have leadership to sign him. And he ended up going to the Rams, and that worked out for us because we brought in Brad Johnson, who could be another honorable mention, is another one that got shafted. Brad Johnson was pretty good. The 1 year that he was here, like in a stable situation in 99, he had a great season under North Turner. But then they brought in, Dan Snyder got involved, brought in Jeff George, and then everything went to crap in 2000. We all know that. But yeah, I agree. I mean, Trent Green is like a what could have been. He definitely, I think you're imagining Kansas City Trent Green and not Washington Trent Green. He was only like a second or third year player when he was here, but there was potential there for sure.
Yeah. He injured his knee after that big season he had with us, the 24 touchdowns, 11 pick year, 3,400 yards. That was big for us.
Mm-hmm.
But he injured his knee, and that was it, like you said. And then he went to St. Louis.
No, he
He had
injured his knee in St. Louis. He injured his knee in preseason in St. Louis. He
is
tore
that
his
what it
knee up,
was?
and that's
Okay.
how Kurt Warner. Yeah, that's when Kurt Warner started playing because of that. But Trent Green was supposed to be the guy because Mike Martz had been the quarterback coach here early on in Green's career, and then he went to the Rams, and then he's the one that kind of brought Trent Green. But he was supposed to be that guy, but ended up being Kurt Warner, and I guess that worked out okay.
Yeah. I mean, and statistically, Green didn't really ever. No, he had a couple of 4,000-yard seasons, man.
He was a good
4,500 yards.
quarterback. He was a
Yeah,
good
he was.
quarterback.
Yeah, he was. Oh man. Yeah, some of that's painful considering we can't
Yeah.
find people for positions over 30 years. Hey, real quick, I want to get your thoughts on your list non-commanders. We'll just do this rapid fire, but only skill positions. I'm not going to get all the way into like tackles and stuff like that. But if I said to you your greatest defensive backs, two greatest defensive backs of all time, who are you picking?
I'm going to go Darrell Green and Rod Woodson. Those are my two guys. Everybody, I know Deion Sanders is the sexy pick, and everybody wants to say Deion Sanders. Let me say, if Deion Sanders could tackle, he would have been Rod Woodson. That's how good Rod Woodson was as a corner. Don't sleep on that dude. That guy was an amazing corner.
I'm going Darrell Green and Deion. They played in the same era. Deion was such a superstar cornerback. Honorable mention would be Darrell Revis, but I just think that Deion was so impactful to the game, as was Darrell Green. Give me your free safety and strong safety.
Gosh, that's going to be free and strong because I'd go
Yep.
Ed Reed and Ronnie Lott would be my two safeties, and they would be interchangeable there. I guess maybe somebody like a Palomalu,
Yeah.
you could put at strong safety, but I'm taking Ronnie Lott and Ed Reed as my two safeties. I don't care. They can figure it out as far as who plays what. They can both do whatever they want.
I'm going Ed Reed and Palomalu. That's without question a fantastic duo there. Hey, linebackers, give me three of them. I don't care what position they play. Give me your three linebackers.
I'm going Lawrence Taylor. That is an absolute no-brainer. I'm going to go give me Junior Seau in the middle. I'll take Junior Seau. There's a lot of good middle linebackers to choose from. No, give me Ray Lewis. I'll take Ray Lewis over Junior Seau.
I was waiting on it.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, like, I love Junior, but I think Ray Lewis probably got him in the middle. And my other outside backer, give me Derek Thomas.
Ooh, good pull. I'm going Lewis. I'm going Seau, and I'm gonna go Fletcher. I just got three middle linebackers.
You're getting no pass rush. I got you.
All right, DNs. Who you got?
Defensive ends, Reggie White and Bruce Smith.
Yeah, that's really hard to argue. Holy crap. But I'm going to argue it. I think there were some defensive ends, and give me a second.
There's plenty of good defensive ends out there.
2000s. Chase Young, no. You know what? I'm gonna, because I can't find these people fast enough. Jason Taylor was great. Gosh, I'm looking this up. Sorry, Javon Curse was amazing. Simeon Rice was great.
Mario Williams,
Jared Allen, Jared Allen was fantastic. Mario Williams.
Jared. None of those guys can touch Bruce Smith and Reggie White, though.
Oh, sorry. Whoa. No. I'm going Julius Peppers and Michael Strahan.
All right, Peppers, yes. Strahan, I'll give you, but no. I mean, if you're putting Strahan against Reggie White, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're right. Reggie White should be on that list. Where are we at? Okay. Are we on offense already? Because we're not going to do defensive tackle. You have two defensive tackles that come off the top of your head?
Terrence Knighton and no, I don't know. Defensive tackle. There's plenty of good defensive tackles. Was that dude, the one we didn't sign from San Francisco? What was his name?
Bob Lilly.
Bryce Young from San Francisco. And you look him up if you don't, because he's the guy when he had Stubblefield and Young, and we signed Stubblefield. We should have signed Young.
Bryce Young doesn't sound right. It wasn't Bryce, was it?
I'm pretty sure it was Bryce Young.
Bryce Young, look it up.
He's the current. He's a quarterback from Alabama, but no, I'm pretty sure Bryce Young was, or maybe it was Bryant Young. Might have been Bryant Young.
Yeah, that sounds more
Bryant
right.
Young. Okay, Bryant Young. Yeah, and I'm sure there was another great defensive tackle. I just can't think of. Oh, Warren Sapp. Easy, Warren Sapp.
Warren Sapp is a great call. Aaron Donald is also in there.
Good call. Yeah. I'm thinking old guy still.
I'll go Sapp and Aaron Donald.
Yeah, that's fair. I'll give you that.
Cortez Kennedy was really good for a while.
Yeah, he was. Yeah. The U. Gotta love the U, man.
You gotta love it. All right. Two wide receivers all time. Who you take?
Jerry Rice and Randy Moss.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
That's easy.
No argument here. Let me think real quick. You can make an argument for Megatron. You can make an argument for Megatron, right?
I mean, you can make an argument. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald would be one of those guys you could make an argument for too. But longevity and greatness, it's Moss and Young and Rice.
Tim Brown up there too. Yeah.
Nah, Tim Brown would be a guy you could put in there. There's plenty of good receivers. Art Monk would be in that discussion for me. Michael Irvin would be in that discussion for me. But I don't think anybody touches the two that I picked.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, tight end. Give me one.
Tight end's tough. Tony Gonzalez, probably. I think Tony Gonzalez would be my guy. But like Kellen Winslow, like, I don't know. He's kind of, he's a little before my time. He was kind of at the tail end of his career. I mean, Gonzalez, Antonio Gates,
Gronkowski,
Gronk. Yeah, Gronk could be in there. I'm going to stick with Gonzalez. Gonzalez is my guy. I'm a big Tony Gonzalez fan.
You know what? I'm going to go, God. I could even say Jimmy Graham. You know,
Too
just
short.
throwing off.
His peak was too short, though. He was good for a couple of years.
Here's a name that probably pissed you off: Jay Novacek. You remember when he played for the Cowboys? I don't think he's on that list, but he was
He's
great.
good, not great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did exactly what he was good for that team. But yeah.
Give me 2 running backs.
Running backs. Boy, that one's tough, right? I mean, Barry Sanders and I want to put Bo Jackson on there because, gosh, Bo Jackson was amazing, but he just was such a short. He wasn't a full-time player, and he was so short-lived in his career because he got injured. But oh my gosh, was he unbelievable! I mean, Barry Sanders is an absolute no-brainer. I've never seen a better running back than Barry Sanders. And Thurman Thomas is really great. Emmitt Smith. I can't put a Cowboy on there. Emmitt Smith, I'll tell you about Emmitt Smith is like if you're showing your kid, just a kid, like highlights of a running back to watch, Emmitt Smith is absolutely that guy. Because like if you show your kid Barry Sanders and say emulate that, you just can't, right? But Emmitt Smith was like the master at following his blocks, reading his keys, getting his he was so good at that. But he's a Dallas Cowboy, so I'm not putting him on here. Give me LT. Yeah, give me Barry Sanders and LaDainian Tomlinson. That's what I'll take.
Yeah, I think I'm going to agree with you. Barry Sanders, number 1. LaDainian Thomas, number 2. I didn't see Gale Sayers, didn't see Walter Payton, those guys. So, yeah, I'm going to take those 2.
Yeah.
Marshall Faulk would be in that.
Yeah,
for
Faulk
me
was one
as
I was
well.
thinking of, too. I couldn't think of his name right then, but yeah. Yeah, he was good. He was unbelievable. Edgerrin James, another one that was really good. And he's another fundamental, solid running back that could just he just played the position correctly, like Emmitt Smith. But as far as just wow players, LT and Barry Sanders, and Thurman Thomas too. Thurman Thomas was great.
He was good. He was good.
He was a do-it-all back too.
I liked Eddie George during his time.
Yeah.
I liked Priest Holmes. Priest Holmes had like a 2 or 3 year run where he was
a fantasy monster for a couple of years there.
Wasn't he?
Dude, there was one year, this dude in my fantasy league, it was like the last year Priest Holmes was good, and he got Priest Holmes with the number 1 overall pick, and then in the 6th round, it was LaDainian Tomlinson's rookie year, and this dude ended up with Priest Holmes, LaDainian Tomlinson, and he just slaughtered all of us. It was the worst thing ever. Yeah, it was like 2002 or whatever. It was just like, oh, you suck, man. You got so lucky.
Great.
Yeah.
Don't sleep on Jamal Lewis from the Ravens either during his time when they were making their run, but I don't think he played long enough for that. All right, quarterback. Who's your number 1? GOAT.
This one might be controversial, but I'm still going to stick with it. The best quarterback I have ever seen play, in my humble opinion, John Elway. John Elway. John Elway was so good. And people just look at the 3 Super Bowl losses and they just that automatically disqualifies him, right? They discount the fact that John Elway dragged crap teams that were coached by Dan Reeves to the Super Bowl 3 out of 4 years. He was such a good quarterback, man. And when he finally got the coaching staff and offense around him, how good he was those last 4 years that he was in the league. John Elway, if I was starting a team tomorrow and can have any quarterback in his prime, I think I would pick Elway. I would. He was so good. And I know that, nothing against Brady, obviously, in Montana, Peyton Manning, all those guys were great. But Elway did more with less talent around him for so long that he was such a good quarterback. And he got shafted for so many years. I was so glad to see him to finally win towards the end of his career. But yeah, he was great.
I like Elway too. I wouldn't put him up there that high. I'm a huge Marino guy, man. I love Dan Marino. And again, I was just a little kid, but I remember Dan Marino's quick release. And he just was always chucking that ball somewhere. Very accurate.
Dan Marino would throw for 8,000 yards in today's NFL. He would be unbelievable. Yeah, you could plug him into any era, especially the current era with the rules that they are today. Yeah, he would throw for 6,000-7,000 yards. He's ridiculous.
Yeah, but my all-time GOAT is actually Peyton Manning. I don't think when it comes to playing the position, yes, Brady has more accolades. Yes, I understand Brady being considered the GOAT. But when it comes to being a technician at the quarterback position, there was none greater than Peyton Manning. I mean, the things he did at the line of scrimmage, the influence he had over the offense, right? Being a coach on the field, just his execution was just unreal. Peyton Manning is the best quarterback in the history of the NFL. I get Tom Brady was the GOAT, but Peyton Manning was the best, period. Nobody's come close to him, in my opinion. So, Peyton Manning.
I'm all right with Peyton Manning. Yep. I like Manning. Montana, don't oversleep on Joe Montana either. That guy was utterly amazing. He was, in the perfect situation for him. Yeah, but like he was just in a great situation with a great coaching staff and a great supporting cast. But make no mistake, that dude could have won anywhere. It was a bold move for Bill Walsh to take him when he did, because that style, like he wasn't a great fit in like the Coryell style, like everything back in the day was either you were throwing deep or you were handing off. That's pretty much what you were doing at quarterback. And Montana wasn't that guy, but for the offense that they ran, he was just an absolute fit like a glove. And as he progressed as a quarterback, he could have migrated to any type of offense and won, because his accuracy was off the charts. And he didn't have a great arm, but he had a good enough arm to make all the throws. Like he had some decent mobility. He was a good pocket technician. Montana was great. I don't want to take anything away, but yeah, my guy is going to be Elway. Always will be.
Honorable mention to Steve Young and Drew Brees. Both deserve some love. I don't know about last Steve question. No, come on. Steve Young was amazing.
He's all right.
Any of those quarterbacks you think could have taken them as they were, put them on the Redskins since like 1993, and any of them would have won a Super Bowl?
No, this team's been too poorly managed for too long. They wouldn't probably have won a Super Bowl. They would have done a lot better with Peyton Manning at quarterback. But I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to project. But you know what I will say? So we're going to get off topic for a little bit. I was reading something on I'm just going to laud Joe Gibbs here for a second, because I'm going to tell you straight up that any of those coaches that people would like to put ahead of him on the list, like Bill Walsh or Bill Belichick or anything like that, tell me if any one of those guys are winning a Super Bowl with Doug Williams or Mark Rippon as their quarterback. And that's all I'm going to say. Joe Gibbs did it, and those guys did. I saw something on like Facebook or Instagram last week, and they were like top 10 coaches, and they put all these coaches on there, and all these people were like, take off Joe Gibbs and put in, Don Coryell. And I'm like, dude, I don't like arguing on social media, but some people are just so stupid that you can't. Like, Joe Gibbs is the only coach who has ever done what he's done, which is win 3 Super Bowls with different quarterbacks, none of whom are in the Hall of Fame. Never had 3 Super Bowls with different running backs. He did it all. Joe Gibbs coached a team of replacement players to a victory over an NFL team with like Randy White, Danny White, Tony Dorsett, right? That's like Space Jam, like in real life. For real. That's like the Monstars showed up and they playing, the Toon Squad. And Joe Gibbs coached the Toon Squad to a win over the Monstars. So we didn't go into coaches today, but Joe Gibbs is my guy. Greatest coach of all time.
I think I'm going with you. Joe Gibbs, that's the GOAT. There's been a lot of great coaches in the NFL too, but Belichick, I think, deserves the love and respect, but he also had Brady. You can't give them both. Like, they both can't be GOATs, in my opinion. Like, one of them has to get more credit than the other. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah. Nobody did what Gibbs did. Other coaches have done, maybe not won 6 Super Bowls, but other coaches have won multiple Super Bowls with a Hall of Fame quarterback. Nobody has won 3 Super Bowls without a Hall of Fame quarterback.
You got to give love, though, to Andy Reid and Bill Walsh, George Seifert, those guys.
Not Seifert. Get Seifert out. No, he doesn't. Don't put him in that conversation. Seifert, no. Not Seifert.
Okay. All right. Hey, thanks for checking us out tonight. Hope you enjoyed our episode. Leave your all 22 Redskins, Commanders, football team, whatever, in the comments. Let us know who your GOATs of this organization are at each position. We look forward to reading those and interact with you guys there. Once again, shout out to Brian, who's on the road. Yodelay hoo, Brian. And Eric, man, we'll catch you next week.
Catch you on the flip.